The fourth principle of strategic case making is learning to navigate around the dominant narratives. So for most of us who do all of the kind of social justice work we've been talking about, there are always narratives that are already pervasive on the issue. For example, we just had a conversation in this country about stimulus checks coming from the federal government, and there was a conversation in Congress about whether or not $600 of a stimulus check would be too much because people would not work, or that would be too much because people didn't deserve it, or because of a whole series of issues. There are a whole set of dominant narratives about whether people deserve to have, or whether people can manage their resources or the funding. All of those kinds of things are really inconsequential to the fact that people actually need help during the midst of a pandemic, but they got in the way. And so one of the things that we have to learn to do is to navigate around them. And that language is not by mistake. It's very much on purpose. I didn't say go headlong and sort of try to argue somebody out of that stuff, or, confront it directly on. When we think about dominant narratives are things that we have told ourselves culturally over and over again. We tell it through our popular culture. We tell it through the newspaper and the media. We tell it to each other over and over and over again. They come to dominate the way that we think about issues because culturally, right, we tell stories in that particular way. The challenge is many of those stories are so ingrained in just the way that we think about the world, our mental models for how the world is supposed to work, that you're never going to talk somebody out of that stuff. Folks who think folks are undeserving, or if you build affordable housing, they're going to ruin the neighborhood, all the things that pervade our conversation. You don't want to spend your real estate in terms of the conversation trying to talk people out of stuff that's not even directly related to the thing you're talking about. So often when we're working with groups around strategic case making, and they give us a long list of the things that they think they got to get people, over. People will talk about property values, and people will talk about this and that. And I say, you could certainly develop a brief or research along the lines of what folks are talking about. But when you do that, the challenge of that is what will happen is you'll end up having this whole additional conversation that's not even about the thing that you're talking about. You've gotten completely sidetracked in a conversation that's not even central to the work that you're trying to do. Rather than do that, right, what we know in strategic case making is you got to have one or two strategies. You either got to reframe the conversation, take it in a different direction, or you got to understand how to pivot around the stuff that's just negative, that is not going to be worth your time to try to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And this is one of the harder principles, especially for folks in the social justice space, because we want to argue about the stuff that's patently untrue, the misperceptions, the stereotypes, the biases. You want to talk people out of the misperceptions that people have. And it's hard because, and this is why it's called strategic case making, while all that stuff may be misperceptions, disinformation, all of that, right? What you don't want to be is taken off course of the thing that you're trying to get done. So strategically in the conversation, you've got to be thoughtful about how you pivot around the stuff, right? Get to a different conversation that forces people to stay on top of the very conversation that you need to have. And it's tough, but necessary. That's why it's the fourth principle of strategic case making.